Hello, welcome. My name is Adrian, and today I wanted to talk about what it was like going through school without knowing that I was autistic. And I don't know, basically, I'm just going to be recounting my school experience. So, to be clear, I'm not trying to diagnose or say what autism is. Like, I'm just recounting my school experience as a whole. So don't think that every little thing I'm saying, I'm like, if this was you, you're autistic. That's not what I'm saying. So I'm just gonna make that clear because apparently you have to say that or people will be annoying in your comments like, that doesn't mean you're autistic. Like I'm not saying that. Thank you. Anyway, I started like structuring this video, but then I've just been procrastinating recording YouTube videos, so I'm just gonna forget about that and just start yapping and see how that goes. I don't know. But when I had the idea about this video, I figured I would start like elementary through high school is what I would talk about. But then I was having memories of like even before that too, like in like daycare before even preschool of like this place that I used to go to and just thinking about it. So like when I was about 3, that's about as little as I can remember is like 3 years old. I don't necessarily remember much from before 3 years old, but I do remember I went to this, well, the way I saw it is I thought it was all preschool, but you know, later on I'm like, oh, I wasn't part of the actual preschool. I was just the daycare because I was too young to be in the preschool, which would have been 4-year-olds. And I just know, I mean, it was pretty chill there. I had a couple friends that I remember, and so I'm pretty sure I mostly enjoyed being there. It was fine. One thing I do remember is that I always wanted to do what the older kids were doing, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't able to participate, so I really didn't like that. It was a little bit, I can remember being irritated that I couldn't do it because I felt like, to me, it was like, oh, these people don't think I'm smart enough to do the same things. I'm like, you know, I'm smart too. I want to do this. I was really into learning. I think from a very young age, I started doing these little workbooks and stuff like that. So I was always interested in learning how to write and learning math. Like I was really into that. So that's what I remember about that. And after that, at some point, I ended up in an actual preschool. Well, I went to a preschool for like one day, right? Because I hated it. I basically left after the first day. I think it was my grandmother who picked me up, and I basically begged her to never make me go there again. There was a very specific reason why, but overall I hated the entire experience. You know, it was new and foreign to me, you know, a new environment, so that's automatically scary, right? But I didn't like the whole setup and the things that we had to do, the way it was all structured. I didn't like it. I wasn't having fun. So, you know, back to the daycare thing. I mean, I know that I was able to do things that I enjoyed, like playing with Play-Doh. Play-Doh was fun for me, and Legos were fun for me. So that was like super chill. But so this preschool, right? At some point in the day, there's like these separate play areas, you know, with different things going on. And I think we were rotating, you know, it would be like 2 or 3 kids in one area at a time or something, and we'd rotate or whatever. And I can remember going to, and in hindsight, I realized why I was choosing what I did, which was like to go to the kitchen area, right? I thought about this, I don't know, a while back. I was looking at pictures of me from when I was younger, and I saw this picture of me as a toddler and this little play kitchen thing I had. And I was like, oh, at this preschool, I probably went to the kitchen area because it was literally the most familiar thing to me. I'm like, I have a kitchen set at home. This is where I'm gonna go, right? I tried to go to this section, and some other little kid told me that I couldn't play there. She said, you can't play here because you're too fat. Like, first of all, what? I wasn't even fat, for one. Like, I mean, obviously you can see right now I'm very skinny. I wasn't really this proportion wise. I was bigger as a kid, but I was never fat. So like, it didn't even make any sense. But it's just like saying that I can't play because of that, rude. There was actually another kid there who stood up for me and was nice. So that was nice, but I hated that. Of course, that was so mean. Who would enjoy that experience, so that was the main thing. But I also like hated everything about the way that it was. Like, it wasn't fun for me. I didn't like the things that we were doing. So yeah, I begged to never go back there again. And thankfully my grandmother, listened to me and was like, yeah, we're not gonna do that. Yeah, I didn't have to go there again. Eventually I ended up at a different preschool, and that was fine. I don't really remember much about it, to be honest. The only thing I remember is that we had nap time, and they had these little like cots to sleep on. Like, I don't know what you call those, right? But my grandma made blankets and pillows for my whole class with Clifford the Big Red Dog fabric. So that made me feel cool and important, because I'm like, yeah, my grandma made these for us. Like, that made me feel really cool. So that's the one thing that I remember about that place. Moving on to elementary school, there probably wasn't that. Truly, that was probably like the happiest time of my life, is when I was that age. For the most part, there were a couple, okay, like first grade and third grade, I really wasn't a fan of because of the teachers that I had. Both those teachers were pretty strict, especially the first grade one. I didn't like it. It was really stressful, and I didn't really have friends. There was like one kid that I hung out with, but it's like, I still didn't feel like I had friends, really, in first grade. So that wasn't all that fun for me. And third grade, I've always been really terrified of getting in trouble. And my third grade teacher was pretty strict. And there's kind of like this reward system in place. But if you did anything to get in trouble, you'd get your name written on the board. And then if you did something else, you'd get like a check and like another check, and like it meant different things. First, it was like you couldn't participate in this one thing, and then if you had your name on the board, and then if you had a check next to your name, you can do this other thing. But like, I was afraid of getting in trouble because you can get it's like you could get in trouble for even not. She was really big on pushing in our chairs, so you could get your name written on the board if you forgot to push in your chairs. So that always really stressed me out, because I'm like, I also have ADHD, right? And a big thing with that is forgetfulness and like all this kinds of things. But so I had always been aware that I forget things sometimes that I could get in trouble for. So that was like always really stressful for me, because I'm like, don't forget to push in your chair. Like, it was just so stressful. But I mean, overall, elementary school was fine. Like I said, I was always really into learning. So I was very motivated to be in school every day, specifically to learn things. Like yeah, I was a giant nerd. Okay, so I was very motivated to do well in school. So there's that. And for the most part, kids pretty much left me alone. And so that was nice. I don't know, it seems like everyone, neurodivergent or not, has been bullied at some point. I don't really think that I've ever been bullied. Like, yeah, I've had people be not kind to me, but it's never been a problem where it was like consistently being bullied by, the same people, like, over and over. It was never like that. Like, yeah, I got made fun of sometimes, but overall, I was just left alone. I'd always been a more quiet kid, right? But one thing I always hated was being called shy. I don't like being called shy. I never liked that, especially when I was younger. I really, really hated it because it just didn't feel accurate to me, because I'm like, well, shy implies that you're afraid of people. And I'm like, I'm not afraid of people. I'm not really afraid of talking. I just don't want to talk. I just don't have anything to say right now, or I don't necessarily know how to start conversations and maintain conversations. To me is all, it didn't really make sense. Though interestingly, at some point, I'm gonna say probably like around second grade, throughout the rest of elementary school, I tried to develop a more outgoing personality. It was definitely like a forced thing. It was like something that I was trying to do to be more accepted, more liked. Probably specifically because I really didn't like being told how shy and quiet I was all the time. I didn't like it, and especially the way kids say it, it's like they think it's weird, or sometimes they just kind of pity you, which I also didn't like. And so I hated that. I tried to be more outgoing and try to make jokes, and like, I'd start talking to random people at times. Though apparently it still didn't really work that well, because I still was called quiet pretty often, right? But I guess around certain people, I did manage to get certain people to realize, like, hey, I'm not exactly shy, and I can be talkative and fun or whatever with kids that I was more comfortable around, I guess. But something as far as like developing the mask, right? I started masking very early on. In elementary school, the way that I went about masking was so obvious because it was like I would straight up copy people. In the early stages of masking, it was very interesting, but it didn't really matter too much because it's little kids. And I realized, I could realize, even like getting to a certain point in elementary school, I realized that I couldn't use some of the same like tactics that I was with interacting with other kids. I can remember consciously thinking this, oh, like I can't, be this certain way anymore, because at this point other kids are going to catch on. Like, they're going to catch on to what? I didn't really know at the time, because I didn't know that I was autistic and ADHD. I had no idea about that. And so I just always knew that I was a little bit different in the way, like, I felt in elementary school, I felt like I was like manipulative. How do you say that? What? I felt that way because I don't know, it just seems like I was working so hard to be able to make friends. And like I was trying to say, I went about this in a very obvious way, where I would straight up copy the way people talked. It's not even ever that I really stopped doing this. I just began, as I got older, I would do it in more and more subtle ways, but elementary school was like very, very obvious. I would try to talk exactly like somebody else. I would add things to my vocabulary that were not in my normal vocabulary. Do you know what I mean? I don't know, say like if I was trying to be friends with some kid. I mean, I grew up in Florida, right? So some people are very, very southern, and say certain things. I wouldn't necessarily try to copy exact like accents or anything like that, but I would start using like the words that they would use that I would not. You know how like Southern people might say certain things that most other people don't. Just like weird, they have weird little words sometimes. So I'd like add stuff like that to my vocabulary and this kind of stuff. And that went for like any kind of person. So I talked to a different kind of person and I developed their words and the way they speak in a very obvious way, and somehow it's like none of them ever really said anything about it. But I guess because I did it when I was like really young, so like the first few years of elementary school, and then later on I guess I did it less. But I mean, I would copy people's hobbies. I did learn a valuable lesson when it comes to copying people and why you can't do it exactly, because I tried to get, I thought, I went into this thinking like, oh, this is going to be cool, and this person's going to think I'm cool if I get the same shoes as them. Like, I went out of my way to get my family to get me the same shoes as another kid that I went to school with. And I thought they were going to think it was cool, but they got mad at me for being a copycat. So it's like, oh, okay, so don't copy people that much, because they'll get mad at you for copying them. Noted. But yeah, I would copy people's hobbies. Like my best friend in second grade did gymnastics. I started doing gymnastics. I really liked it. And even my best friend in fifth grade played soccer. I started playing soccer, which, I mean, truly, I love that for me. I continued to play soccer all throughout school, like, middle, high school, all the way up till I graduated. So, I mean, that was cool. That was cool. I ended up really enjoying it. But yeah, I would just copy people to an insane degree. And that's how I would mask. And, also just not talking when I didn't know what was going on. But yeah, elementary school would have been the time when I was most outgoing. Jeez, this is gonna be a long video. I don't know if I should yap this much. I don't know how much I can cut out of this to make it not so long. Oh, let me tell this story though. When I was in kindergarten, I got in trouble for drawing on the sidewalk with crayon. Me and my kindergarten best friend both got called down to the office. I found out years later, my mom told me that they literally told her that I vandalized the school. Like, that's dramatic, okay? Dramatic, okay? I got called down to the office where this administrator was so mean, just lectured me for a long time, okay? And like I said, I've always been terrified of getting in trouble, right? And so I was terrified, holding back tears from the moment that I was called to the office, right? I'm like doing my best to hold it all together. And I get to the office and I'm sat in front of this lady and she's just scolding me. And I'm, obviously not making eye contact with her. And I'm just trying not to burst into tears. Given my upbringing, I learned very early on to suppress my emotions. So that's what that is. I was not at all comfortable expressing emotion as a child. Like, I was scared. I'm like, if I express emotion, I get in trouble. So I'm like doing everything to hold it in, right? And this lady is just being so mean. I mean, I never wanted to be in trouble. I always was, I wanted to be good so bad all the time. I didn't understand that I was going to get in trouble for drawing in crayon on the sidewalk. I didn't think it was any different than using chalk on the sidewalk, which, we had done in school. So like, I didn't know that that was going to be something that I was going to get in trouble for. But I did. And so, but this lady is like, you don't seem like you're sorry. And she's like, your friend was crying. You don't feel bad. And like I said, the whole time I'm using every bit of my power to hold back tears because I'm afraid of expressing emotion, because historically that meant that I just got in more trouble, right? And I'm like, that it was the most bizarre thing. I'm like, why do you work in a school and you want children to cry? That was probably one of the first like major times when I felt extremely misunderstood, because obviously she entirely misread me, because I wasn't like some little psychotic narcissist or something that didn't feel bad. I was terrified. I was terrified. And she's sitting here trying to tell me that I don't feel bad when I'm here like scared shitless, holding back tears, and she's like trying to make me cry. Horrible. So yeah, anyway, moving on. Middle school is like the beginning of the worst years of my life. I hated it. It was terrible. First of all, I was gonna have to go to a middle school where I didn't know anybody. I was really upset about it. I was trying beforehand, like doing everything I could, trying to like tell my family, like, please get it, like do, because I wasn't zoned for the middle school that most of my peers would have been going to. I had to go to school in a different city, and that's the first thing, okay, right? I mean, moving on to middle school is big for any kid, right? It's like a major transition. It's a whole new school with new people, right? But for me, it was like, at least if I would have gone to that other school, I would have been with kids that I had been used to seeing, right? But no, I went to a school where there were zero familiar faces. None. I didn't know anybody. And it was very different. It was a magnet school, and it was very strict and rigid. Again, like I said, terrified of getting in trouble. I was terrified the whole 3 years because it was a very strict school, very intense. I felt they ran that school like it was a prison. I swear to you, it was awful. Okay, and I didn't know anybody, and they were all so different. I was like, this is like, it was like I was dropped onto a different planet, is what it felt like. And I didn't really make friends in middle school. I didn't really make friends. I guess like eventually I made one friend, but I'm gonna be real, lover, and we're cool now, but like at that time it was like a lot to take in. I felt like, I don't know, I just felt like I was being trauma dumped on all the time when I already had enough of my own trauma, right? And so there's that. But like, yeah, I didn't really make friends all of middle school, and I didn't really talk at all. People thought I was probably, more than ever, people thought that I was really quiet and shy and loved to tell me that, and I of course still found it annoying, but I didn't talk, which was probably good for me. I think if I had talked more, I probably would have been bullied, because I truthfully didn't know what was going on half the time. Like, it was like, I don't know, it kind of felt like, oh God, maybe I've been very sheltered. I don't know, like I was very innocent, and like, so I did not know half of the stuff that was going on. So I just kept my mouth shut all the time until like I actually knew what was happening. Like there were a lot of times where, I'm just silently observing everything, and there was a lot of stuff like the people would, be talking, I'd listen to people's conversations, and like I just didn't really get what was going on half the time. And like I said, I think it's probably best that I didn't talk much, because there actually were some really terrible kids from what I'd heard from, some other kids and what I had observed. There were some really mean kids who treated some other kids not well at all. So yeah, middle school was terrible for me. The only thing that was my saving grace in middle school was being in orchestra, because I really liked playing the violin. And it was honestly the best way of regulating my emotions at this time. I played the violin, all the time. I was good at it. I was in middle school concert master several times. So that made me feel good, and that was like the thing that kept me from going insane every day, is that I was in orchestra and got to play the violin. Yeah, so I mean, pretty much the way that I survived middle school is like I just stayed in my own little lane and didn't talk to anybody, just praying that nobody would mess with me and annoy me. So that was that. It was terrible. I was basically disassociating the entirety of middle school. So truthfully, I don't even remember it all that well. Like some point last year, I actually had a memory, kind of like reliving the experience of my first day of middle school. It was very honestly very interesting and esoteric kind of experience that I had about going back into this memory. And it was like the first day, and it was like I got to lunchtime, and I just like being reliving that experience. It like everything around me felt so dense, like everything was so dense and heavy. And it was like this first day at lunchtime was the first time that I like came back into the present moment and was like aware, like, oh my god, like I feel like I can breathe for a moment, because the whole experience was so overwhelming and terrifying to me. It really was. I mean, it got a little better by, 8th grade. I'm like okay with being at this school. It's not as terrible, but it was still terrible. It was still pretty terrible, honestly. I hated middle school. I really, really did. It was not great for me at all. But yeah, that's pretty much how I got through it. The developing of my masking was done at this time through just observing everything, just observing, just the blank mask, just like stripped myself of all identity, and I was just kind of there observing everything. So moving on to high school, I can remember I'm going into high school thinking, everything's going to be better. I'm going to entirely reinvent myself. I'm going to make friends. I'm gonna have more fun. Like it's gonna be good. Like we're gonna have a great time. Quite disappointing. I was probably truly more miserable than ever by the time that I got to high school, even though it's like looking at everything, it should have been better. I should have been doing better by high school. But I think a part of it really was that like middle school, like I said, I felt like I was disassociating the entire time. So I think that was just kind of like held in somewhere and not really. And then like I got to high school, and it was like it kind of like this stuff came to the surface more, is what I feel like happened. And so I mean, because going into high school, it was better. It felt, the environment felt better to me. It was more relaxed in a way. Just the not having the strictness of my old school felt like I could relax a little bit, like I didn't have to be as on edge all the time. So there is that element. And I did make 2 really great friends in high school. So that was really good for me. If I didn't have them, I wouldn't have made it, because truthfully, my mental health went like very sharp decline in high school. I was very depressed, very anxious, and I was miserable. It's weird because it was like I was having more fun. I was doing more things in high school than in middle school, and I was in some ways happier, yes, but I was also at the same time more miserable, anxious, depressed, bad coping mechanisms that I don't really want to get into, but they were harmful. And yeah, I was really, really struggling in high school. And I went through every day, like, I was always listening to music. I always had headphones in, which, was nice. And even in classes where the teacher really wasn't like, there were a lot of chill teachers, right, that would be okay with that, me listening to music, and there were some others that weren't. I mean, there was like a few that like absolutely not, like you absolutely could not do that, you would get in trouble. But then some other ones that also weren't okay. But like, because of the kind of person I am, like I'm, you know, I was the quiet kid. I was always the quiet kid, okay? And I, I never was very outgoing. And I also did well in school. I graduated in, I wasn't valedictorian or anything, because like I said, my mental health was on a very sharp decline. So it's like I was like mentally terrible, okay? Like mental health wise, terrible. But somehow I still managed to graduate within the top 20 of my class. So like, I'm just lucky that school came easy to me in that way. But, but because of this, like, because I was well behaved and I got good grades, there were certain teachers who just didn't mind if I was always listening to music. I always had headphones in. And that's pretty much how I survived that. Even at some points, I would sleep in some of my classes. I mean, I was very sleep deprived. I was always exhausted. I was always exhausted. And it's insane because I also my mom used to be mad at me for taking too many naps. But it was like, and I don't even understand, like neurodivergence alone and the sheer weight and exhaustion that comes from just trying to exist as an autistic person and masking, and how much energy that takes every single day. Even without that aspect, it's still a lot. Like, I'm waking up every day at 5 o'clock in the morning to get on the bus and go to school. I'm there till 2:08 every day. And I was in sports. I did in high school volleyball, soccer, and track. I did soccer every year. I did volleyball 3 years, and I did track 1 year. So it was like at least 2/3 every year was spent playing sports. So it was like I go to school every day, and then I go to practice or a game, and somehow, that in itself takes up all day. Like, that takes up a lot of time. And then outside of that, I still have to find time to do homework and practice my violin and do chores at home. Just given all of that, of course you would be tired. And I don't understand why I got in trouble for taking naps. Like, I am exhausted. But yeah, add on top of that masking and the whole social element of it all, and how tiring that was for me. It was terrible. Yeah, I probably was masking more than ever in high school, because elementary school, it's like, kids are a lot nicer at that age. Some mean, more racist than ever as children, because they don't realize that they shouldn't necessarily say all the things that their parents say at home, and they just are openly racist pretty much at that age, at least at least in Florida. I don't know, it's insane. But what was the point of that? But in other ways, generally nicer, right? Because they're just kids, and kids are nicer, like when you're that young. Or it's like easier, the way it's easier to make friends, the way you can just, young kids don't necessarily have the best social skills yet either, neurodivergent or not, right? So, and then middle school, the way I got through is just being quiet, just entirely quiet. So like high school, I had to do like a lot more. I was doing a lot more masking, and that was exhausting for me, always trying to figure everybody out and the way that I needed to be around people. Exhausting, okay? And I was miserable. Like I said, mental health, like, plummeted. And I was like, I'm gonna say, it's hard for me to say what exactly were meltdowns for me, but I'd probably say more than any time ever, I was having the most meltdowns in high school. I can remember times getting home, like getting off the bus, because I rode the bus after school, so I'd get home. I can remember times when I could barely I was always trying to, hold everything in all the time. And it's like I'm getting off the bus and it's getting harder and harder to hold it in. I'm on the walk to my house starting to cry, and then I come into the door and I just basically just collapse on the floor and am just crying, hyperventilating, screaming sometimes. A lot of the times I would just come home and scream because it's like I would just need to let it out. Not every day was that bad. It wasn't always, it was a lot of a lot of days did end up with me crying at some point. The times when I didn't have practice, right? So when I was riding the bus home at those times, and before I had a car, the last couple years I did have a car, so that was more pleasant than riding the bus. But I just get home and break down quite often. So it was really rough for me. Even I can say a while back I actually found a journal that I had from high school, and I was reading it, and it's a lot about me talking about how overwhelming everything was all the time and how I just couldn't meet everyone's expectations. And it's everybody just expected so much from me, and I just felt like I couldn't give it. I didn't have it in me. It was a lot of me talking about how I was always terrified of, if people really got to know me, that they wouldn't like me anymore. Which is basically if people see the unmasked version of me, they will not like me anymore. I just felt like if the more people knew about me, is they would not like me. And then also how unhappy I was. So it was also afraid of of other people being aware of just how depressed and anxious I was. And I was terrified of people not liking me. And it was a lot of me saying I just don't know what's wrong with me. I was constantly in this journal asking, what is wrong with me? I could not understand. It was a lot of me saying, I don't understand why it's so easy for other people. Everything just feels so hard for me. It just feels like people are able to deal with things better than I am, and I couldn't understand why that was. And a lot of me feeling bad, there are people who have had worse things happen to them and they are happier than me, and I couldn't understand. I didn't know that it was the neurodivergence, in my capacity to hold things is just not as great as other people's. I didn't get it. So it was a lot of me also feeling guilty that I was so miserable, and from the outside looking at it didn't seem like I had a reason to be as miserable as I was. And that was really hard for me. Yeah, I don't know, I'm trying to remember what else I wrote about in that journal. It's really quite enlightening to me. I was like, oh wow, yeah, it's the autism, dude. It's the autism. Yeah, I just remember being very miserable in high school. It was very, very intense for me. And then getting to college was it was crazy. Again, a new environment. Yeah, the first year, I almost lost both of my scholarships because it was, I don't know, it was like I didn't really know how to keep up anymore, and I didn't really even have the motivation to be going to college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I never knew what I wanted to do with my life. So there's that, and I just like picked a major that I really was not sure about. I wasn't motivated to do it. It's not what I wanted to do. It did get better after I switched my major. Yeah, I switched my major to psychology, and after almost losing my scholarships, I really did my best to focus. But I mean, this is where the ADHD in particular became very evident because it was like, in college, it just doesn't work the same. And like, I actually had to study at this point in my life, and that was that was new for me, and like trying to figure out the structure and the way to do that, and actually being able to focus and all this stuff. And yeah, college, I didn't make a single friend in college. By the way, I didn't make a single friend. My first year, I guess, like with my roommates, because I did technically stay there, though I was actually mostly staying with my girlfriend at the time. But so I guess I was kind of friends with my two roommates, and those are the only people that I made friends with the entirety of college. I didn't have friends at college at all. I didn't do anything interesting. All I did was go to class and not have any friends. And I mean, I don't know. And then I was working. I started working in high school, actually, but like the first couple jobs I had, I did not work long at all. They were really, really terrible. I quit them so fast. But yeah, after a certain point, I was working and going to school, like in college, and that was a lot for me to handle. I didn't graduate like from college with flying colors at all. I did not. Like, I just did what I needed to do to get the degree, basically. It was rough. But yeah, I don't know. This is a really long video. I think that's all I've got to say. Hopefully I can make this not as long. So I'm just gonna leave it there. I felt like I could have got more into like the specific things about it and like relations to my neurodivergence, but like I've been procrastinating this video, and I couldn't like sit myself down to really make this structured and clear. I just felt like I just gotta do it. Like, I want to make YouTube videos. Like, I just gotta do it, or I'm never gonna do it. So that's what it is. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this wasn't terrible. If you liked, please give it a thumbs up, comment your thoughts down below, share some of your experiences, subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. See you in the next video.